Satou Sabally just became one of the most intriguing free agents on the market.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. I am one of your co-hosts, Sophia Jones, and you are Locked On Women's Basketball, your team every day. Like I said, I'm Sophia Jones, WNBA and women's college basketball analyst. Thanks for being an everydayer and making the Locked On podcast the #1 sports podcast network. Today, we're going to get into who's getting some of these reserved and restricted qualifying offers. Core players are being revealed, especially what all does that even mean? I'll get into that. But first, Satou Sabally is going to be our headliner for today, as she should be. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. So like I said, we are going to have our headliner, Satou Sabally, discuss her first. She is not expected to re-sign with the Phoenix Mercury. It has been officially reported. So now Sabally, who is an unrestricted free agent, is set to have meetings with multiple teams starting on Wednesday, April 8th, so today, and she will be able to sign a new contract on Saturday, April 11th. So a lot of this stuff is coming about and is very new and fresh. But a little bit of context on the situation and how we got here. Sabally spent the first 4 years of her career with the Dallas Slings, and then just last season was her first year a part of another team with the Phoenix Mercury. She was a huge piece of their success. She was in that big three trio along with Alyssa Thomas and Kahleah Copper in the WNBA finals, where she helped get her team to. She averaged 22 points before suffering a concussion during Game 3 and missed Game 4. That Game 4 game was the one that the Aces, of course, eventually won, so they swept the Mercury. But that concussion was unfortunately going to resurface because in December of 2025, it was reported that she would be out indefinitely from Unrivaled because of some lingering concussion symptoms. She did not play the entire Unrivaled season. I mention this concussion stuff because, again, adding context, not speculating, but adding context. Satou, in that Game 3, she collided with Kirsten Bell, Las Vegas Aces' leg. And then she was laying down for a little bit. She was helped to sit up, helped to stand up, then had to be helped to sit back down, and then assisted to stand and walk off the court. And during that entire sequence, after, the Phoenix Mercury came under a lot of fire on how they handled that concussion. They don't believe that she should have been forced to stand or try to do stuff based on her own will, rather as getting a stretcher, and make sure you try to avoid things that can exacerbate the injury, which potentially with all that initial movement right away could have been potentially why she suffered some of these lingering symptoms that ended up having her out for the whole entire Unrivaled season, which was from January to March. So she has not played some basketball, organized basketball, in a cool minute. But with that all being said, she is still an extremely, extremely interesting prospect on the free agent market. She was a huge piece in that Phoenix Mercury title run. There's a reason why she is nicknamed the Unicorn, because she has some amazing height, amazing physicality, but she can score at all three levels. She loves to shoot the three, has a great mid-range game, and can finish really strong at the rim in the mid-post area. A very, very, very versatile big with essentially a guard skill set. And when we're starting to get into some of these potential landing spots that Satou could potentially go to, the one that I could see is at one of the ones at the top, just based off of going some current teams, is the Toronto Tempo. I bring up this Toronto Tempo because she goes there. She would be the star player. Right now, their core player I was supposed to get into that next segment, but it's Marina Mabrey. And with Satou, she has more pedigree, a bit more of a dynamic scorer than Marina, who can also be more of a facilitator as well. But so if she goes to the Tempo, she would be that star player. She would also be playing alongside her sister, Niara. These two went to Oregon together, separate times, but who doesn't love a sister reunion and having the opportunity to play with some family? That could definitely make the process smooth for her. And then I bring up head coach Sandy Brondello, who was just hired for the Tempo for their inaugural season. She comes by way of the New York Liberty and before that, the Phoenix Mercury. But she is a two-time WNBA champion. And when I look at the way she coached Brianna Stewart, where both Stewie and Satu are forwards with that big guard skill set, I see a coach that can bring out Satu's strengths in a similar fashion that Sandy Brondello did with Stewie. I also look at the Tempo's starting point guard, which is going to be Julie Allman. She comes from the Los Angeles Sparks, but she's an international point guard. I bring up the international flair and style because Satu is German. She grew up, or before Oregon, she played on the German circuit. So she's used to that style. And I also think that having a little bit of a pass first point guard like Julie would be essentially good for Satu to get up the looks that she wants to. A little bit different, but another team that I see Satu potentially landing in at is the Los Angeles Sparks. Bring up Sparks because last season they had one of the fastest paces in the WNBA, and they are not afraid to get up a lot of shots, which really plays into Satu's style of play. She always thinks that she has a green light. This is a forward again that will dribble the ball, initiate offense, and has he pull up into a three. So she is not afraid of that, and it would fit into that Los Angeles Sparks offensive style. And looking at the way that the Sparks were last year, they didn't make the playoffs, but right around that post All-Star break period, they became one of the hottest teams in the WNBA. No one wanted to play them. They had a really great winning streak. And then just looking at some of the pieces that could be returning, it could definitely be a problem. And again, a landing spot for Sabally. Also looking at some potential room for her, both Dearica Hamby, Azurá Stevens, and Emma Cannon are all unrestricted free agents going into this offseason. All front court players. So depending if they decide to come back or if the Los Angeles Sparks decide to part ways, that would definitely leave some room for Satu. And again, I could just see her flowing with Kelsey Plum. They were phantom teammates in Unrivaled this year, although they didn't share the court much, but there could have been exchange conversations, of course. And lastly, I will go ahead and throw in the Golden State Valkyries as a potential landing spot. Their identity last year was really they play defense really hard and they have the green light for anyone to shoot, score, and make plays. And again, I mentioned Satu can create her own shot, score all three levels, and loves to shoot the three. And for the Valkyries, they love a good stretch big. They try to space the floor as much as possible. Not as much sets, but more so offense and letting their players create. And Satu is a person that I could see definitely fitting into that. With all that being said, though, I think when you are a player like Satu Sabally and you're with the Phoenix Mercury have what people have always said, some of the best facilities in the WNBA. It's difficult for me to see her going to a situation that will be a potential downgrade. So all these teams that I mentioned, new startup, very fresh, they have good facilities. Even for the Sparks, they're building a brand new one. So, and the Valkyries, they have some top of the line, Tempo, top of the line. That is going to be a standard that I think that if you are a player like Satou Sabally, you should want to stand on that and not let that defer you in any way. So again, she definitely wasn't expecting, or I wasn't expecting to see this news that she is going to depart the Phoenix Mercury, but there's just so much free agency stuff that I'm going to continue getting into because there is a lot going on. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. If you've been really caught up with women's basketball recently, like me, But you want to see what's happening on the men's side, then FanDuel is a great place to start. So use the website to look up current lines and odds to personalize your audience. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve. Well, you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Now we got to get into these cord players. That is a term that some people maybe are familiar with, some people aren't. But essentially, what a core offer is the qualifying offer that comes with the core is a fully guaranteed 1-year deal worth the Supermax, which now under the new CBA will be $1.4 million in 2026. A player can also negotiate different terms and can even be traded via sign and trade. And this core is a specific designation because a team that designates as a core player means that they are the only team which a player can sign or negotiate a contract during the free agency period. So once a team labels another as a core player, that means they can only talk to them, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they will only go to them because there is a sign and trade possibility. So getting over some of the less or the more obvious cord players, Atlanta cord Allisha Gray, they're definitely thinking on the come up, having Allisha Gray, who finished second in most improved player voting last year, now adding Angel Reese into the situation. That is an important piece that you wanted to retain. And looking at the other side, also with Chicago, they're retaining Ariel Atkins. She was a part of the big trade that Chicago brought her in for last year. And if you are losing a player like Angel, Ariel provides a lot of offense and defense, specifically from the guard position, that you definitely want to retain, especially because you don't know what Courtney Vandersloot, with coming off of a torn ACL, is going to look like. As for Indiana, they're going with the guards again with Kelsey Mitchell, but Kelsey Mitchell put her body on the line for the Fever last year, really willed them to the finals. So having her in the backcourt with Caitlin Clark, hopefully healthy this season, could really be some magic. Los Angeles has decided to core Kelsey Plum. She was there with them last year after coming from Las Vegas. That is definitely a piece where, as she goes, the Los Angeles Sparks really go. Minnesota, Napheesa Collier, of course, Queen Fee. As for New York Liberty, they decided to core Sabrina Ionescu. Maybe a little bit one of the more interesting decisions, because Sabrina already said that she was going to return. So New York either just really wanted to be certain of that and make sure that Sabrina felt like she was the centerpiece, despite that Sabrina already said that she was going to return, as opposed to coring another player. But it looks like that's the route that the Liberty decided to take. One thing I found really interesting was there was a video of Sabrina Ionescu practicing Chai Chi at the Temple of Heaven. She's on her Victor Wembanyama off-season training. And if we know that if it helps for him, maybe it can help for her. But if anyone wants a tip, Qigong in the morning is it. The Portland Fire, for their first decision, decided to core Bridget Carlton. She was our unrestricted free agent, picked up in the expansion draft. She was someone that was, for me, surprising that Minnesota decided not to protect, because she was guarded the other team's best perimeter player. She was a starter for them the entire season. Career very, very efficient three-point shooter. So for Portland to get her, especially probably take her out of the clutches of the Toronto Tempo, because she is a native Canadian, maybe a little bit of a smart decision to get her cored early. Similar thinking for Toronto, where they cored Marina Mabrey, where you want to make sure that you can retain her. Maybe a little surprising that she wasn't cored by the Connecticut Sun because she was so important to everything that they did last season, essentially her and Tina Charles. But that was a young team. So that's, again, where some teams decide to go the younger route for everything. As for when it starts to get a little interesting, Dallas has decided to core Arike Agumbawale. Now, this is someone that had a lot of injuries last season. She didn't finish the season with some injuries and was very in and out of the lineup because of those. And so much of the narrative around the Dallas Wings is Paige Bueckers and how they can capitalize on Paige's success and essentially build around her. When you're looking at the Dallas Wings, they brought in Jose Fernandez as a new head coach. A lot of a reason because he knew Paige and Gino Auriemma so well because he coached at University of South Florida when UConn was in the American Athletic Conference, AAC. So looking at all those signs, it is very indicative that the Dallas Wings are looking towards Paige as their future. Not saying that Arike still can definitely help. I think she can. She is one of the most dynamic scorers in the league, probably the deepest bag, just like pure bag work in the league. There's a reason why she's always one of the favorites for those unrivaled one-on-ones. However, just looking at what Dallas potentially wants to do for their future, this is where it is rumored that it could be a potential sign and trade situation. Arike has been in Dallas for a while, so it would definitely sting. However, just looking at some of the signs and where this organization is going in the direction of wanting to really hone in on Paige, even looking at who they potentially might draft, where AZ Fudd is that projected number 1 overall pick, that'll create a lot of guards in the backcourt. So that is definitely one situation that we will continue to keep our eyes on. As for another situation, the Seattle Storm, where their cord player was Ezi Magbagor. And for Seattle, they decided to part ways with their head coach, Noelle Quinn, last season, which usually when you have a big shift like that, it leads to further movement. Some of that further movement that is being reported is Skylar Diggins and Nneka Ogwumike leaving. Now, Skylar Diggins, she was recently seen at a Notre Dame, I don't think, or Elite Eight. It might have been Elite Eight. Yeah, and a Notre Dame, we'll just say tournament game with Noelle Quinn. Obviously looking comfortable. So if they had a relationship, it would make sense maybe why Skylar wasn't keen on staying in Seattle. And as for Nneka Ogwumike, Madam President, she can just do whatever she wants. She's a president for a reason. She negotiated the CBA, and she should definitely feel like she can reap the fruits of her labor. But looking at Seattle coring Ezi Magbagor, that's also interesting when you look at some of the other players involved on that team with like a Gabby Williams or Brittany Sykes. Very good group of veterans, but it's because it was those veterans that all were unrestricted free agents that with Magbagor, you get a little bit younger, especially looking at, of course, the number 2 overall pick from last year's WNBA draft, Dominique Malonga, on that roster. That is really who you look towards being your future. And with Magbagor's court, that already gives you your front court for a good bit of the season and for a good couple of years to come. So it'll be interesting to see what the Storm decide to do moving on. Again, just because of the departure of head coach Noelle Quinn, there's going to be a lot of room for some movement and a lot more that we're definitely going to see in free agency. But like I said, I'm going to get into some of these qualifying offers next because there are a lot of different offers. I know it's confusing. That's why I did all the research, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it. Spring is a natural reset, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communications. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. I'm new to the corporate world. I'm used to being in the sports world, still communicating, maybe more so on the court and through text or email. But corporate world is very different in their communication. But you know what, quote, it makes it really a lot more digestible, I will definitely say. Everything lives in one clean thread: calls, texts, and voicemails. So make this the season no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Now, who is getting offers? I say, and these, I'm going to go over two specific offers: reserved and restricted. Now, we've already gone over the core. Some people are freaking out because maybe their favorite player on a team isn't getting an offer that they specifically want. Like, why are they protecting them over them? What's going on? I'm about to get into some of these specifics and why there's really no need to panic right now. Maybe just a little bit, but not too much. So, for the first qualifying offer that we're going to get into is a reserved offer. So any player who is out of contract within 3 years of service or fewer will become a reserve player if their previous team extends them a reserve qualifying offer, and thus will be subject to that team's exclusive negotiating rights. That one's easy. So both these offers you're going to see for younger players, they're geared towards. Some of the reserved offers that stood out to me just looking through the WNBA transaction list is the Connecticut Sun extending an offer to Minya Torre. Now, this is someone that head coach Rashid Mezian knows because they're both French. Both know that international flair. I mean, country fellow people, I forget what the saying is, but that would make sense. And for the Connecticut Sun, they were a team that struggled last year as a whole, but towards the end of the season, they played hard and they weren't a team that any other group necessarily wanted to play. They were sneaking up on a lot of opponents, and they are definitely a group that I can continue to see coming up, especially when we look at this upcoming relocation to Houston. It could be something really interesting and breathe new life into the franchise. Circling back to the Seattle Storm, also, the Storm extended a reserve qualifying offer to Zia Cook. She didn't really see a ton of playing time and court action last season, but it's someone that can definitely help. I'm sure everyone probably saw that clip of her in high school just dropping a player and having the nastiest finish at the rim. She went through the Don Staley School of Defense and Guardsmanship. So she is coming in a very poised guard that can definitely score. And for the Seattle Storm, if you are looking at some backcourt departures, she would be a good one to make sure you're maintaining. Next one we're going to get into: the Golden State Valkyries extending a reserve qualifying offer to Caitlin Chen. Now, for Caitlin, especially being and covering the Golden State Valkyries so much last year, she was truly a breath of fresh air, and everyone in the franchise loved that about her. She worked was one of the hardest workers on the Valkyries. That was one of the main reasons why head coach Nakase brought her back after they didn't continue with her after training camp and preseason, but then during the Eurobasket period, she did return the team and finish out the season with them. And so that was just someone that injected a lot of positivity into the franchise. And I think it's definitely a smart move to want to continue with her. And again, really strong worker, a lot of upside because of her IQ and point guard ability, especially when the Valkyries are losing Carla Late to the Portland Fire in the expansion draft. Now I'm going to get into some of these restricted offers. So a restricted free agent is a player with 4 years of service whose contract has expired and who receives a qualifying offer from their previous team. And that player so the team can send a restricted qualifying offer to the player, and that agent can then negotiate an offer sheet with the team other than their last team. So if I'm a team and I'm extending this restricted free agent offer to my player, they can either accept it or they can look at another team and that other team can put together a term sheet. And if I decide not to match that, the OG team doesn't match the new team sheet, then they can go with that new team. But if I do decide to match it, I keep that player back. A little confusing. That was the best way I could describe it, though. But some of these restricted free agent offers that, again, stood out to me. For the Aces, they extended them to Nelissa Smith and Kirsten Bell. For a player like Nelissa Smith, she was really big for the Las Vegas Aces turnaround last season. She really allowed Asia to move around in the post more because Nelissa was very physical and more so very interior and low post. Asia, she liked to be more mid post, can step out to the perimeter as well. So I think that's a key piece for the Aces to definitely bring back because, again, she was huge that turnaround that saw a team that was struggling to make the playoffs to then finishing the season so incredibly strong and winning the WNBA championship. Another player that the Aces extended a restricted qualifying offer to was Kirsten Bell. Now, Kirsten Bell, she was a relatively consistent starter for the Aces last season, more so a consistent starter in the way that Jewel Lloyd offered to come off the bench, but that doesn't mean that Kirsten didn't play a part in everything as well. She definitely helped and just filled her role when she needed to on the Aces. As for the Mystics, they extended a restricted qualifying offer to Shakira Austin. Definitely a player that I think you want to keep. She fits so well in that front court with Kiki Irifin. And again, with such a young team, that is going to be definitely one to watch in the years to come. Two players that the Atlanta Dream extended restricted qualifying offers to were Ryan Howard and Naz Hillman. Big pieces to retain. Ryan Howard, she's so electric, can score at three levels, but especially just really creative at getting her shot off from the perimeter. As for Naz Hillman, a great 3-and-D player that was one of the, I believe she finished second or third in most improved player voting. So definitely someone that the Dream want to have in that core players. And for Ryan, Naz, you add Angel, you have Alicia Gray Cord. That team is going to be scary. All I can say. But there is so much free agency stuff going on right now. I hope I didn't miss something as I was currently talking because that is how much is happening. But make sure that you stay up to date on everything that's going on by watching Locked On Women's Basketball. If you don't want to do any of the work, that's what we're here for. So make sure you continue to tune in for all your free agency news.